You will recall that Paul, in writing to the Corinthians, that he talked about love, and he used a term that came out of ancient Greece, which was agape. And in this case, the agape had not been used. And so he reintroduced the term, and it is a term that we have come to understand as the kind of love that God has shown to us, which is a giving, a sacrificial, reaching out to us in our darkest hours, reaching out to us in our joyful times. So this is what Paul says then after going through all of the things that love is all about. And he says, meanwhile, these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Now, there are a number of words that are now being used by, I suspect, all of us. We say about a new sweater we get, oh, I love that sweater. Well, only if you paid $175 for it and sacrificed a lot of money do you really love that sweater. So we soften up the term love in such a way that we love our cars, we love the shrubs that we planted, we love all kinds of things, but we don't use the term love in such a way that it describes a very special thing for us, which is the love that God has for all of his creation. Now, I know that in Hedda's sharing this morning, one of the words that was used was the word hope. And if there's a word that is overused any more than any other word during this time of the year, it's hope. So children hope for various kinds of gifts. Teenagers hope for certain kinds of things in technology. Adults hope that they can survive through the season. But the term hope is a very special term. And it's a term that appears over 100 times in the Old Testament and has a variety of meanings. There's actually a separate Jewish word, Hebrew word, for the term hope that addresses a specific kind of thing. For instance, one hopes for salvation. And so the hope is that they will be rescued from Egypt, or rescued from Babylon, or rescued more recently in their history than as we read the Old Testament, from the rule, and in the New Testament, the rule of Rome. So the hope is in a particular thing that you pray for, that you're looking for God to help you with. So we're hoping for salvation, and it's pretty obvious that one who can give you salvation is Yahweh, Jehovah, God. Another way of understanding hope from a whole different point of view is to say, my hope is in God. That is to say, there's a context to the one who offers one's hope. And that's a whole different Hebrew word to describe hope. And there are other forms of it. There's hopefulness, there's hopelessness, there's a whole number of ways in which the term is used. In the New Testament, particularly the Gospels, it's almost never used. That's interesting. In fact, I did as careful a search as I could to see if I could find the word hope in the Gospel accounts. That is to say, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. And the only place that I could find it was a quote that was being read from Isaiah, and it was in the Gospel of Matthew. And so that word is interesting because it is the Lord delights in those who revere him, who put their hope in his unfailing love. And this was a quote. This was a quote very early on in the Gospel of Matthew. It appeared one other time in Luke, and that's it. And I then said, well, what about Jesus? Did Jesus ever use the term hope, either the Hebrew word hope, or the Greek word hope, or the Aramaic word hope? And all of my research indicated Jesus didn't. Now you're going to know why I think that is. One of the things that surely is clear, that we all hope. We hope for something. I mean, I hope that this cold will get over quickly, so I'm doing all the things necessary to make it happen. Some of them are a little strange, I'm sure, to some of you, but they sure do work for my sinuses. Hope is something we all express. We hope that our dinner will turn out well when we're inviting guests. We're hoping that the baking that we're doing will turn out without flat breads. we're hoping all kinds of things. But from a Christian point of view, the hope is expressed very frequently among us, and in particular in those letters that Paul and others sent out to the early church. You see, the four gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, told the story of Jesus. The rest of the New Testament shows the application of that story, how we might understand the nature of God, the nature of Jesus, how we might more clearly understand what it is that God has offered to us and what it is that we need to do to respond to that offering, to that gift. And so Paul frequently uses the term hope. You may recall in the letter to the church at Corinth, the first letter of 4, we only have 2 of them, but there were 4 letters. The words at the end of the passage on love, there are these 3 things: faith, hope, and love. Now, I want to contend that one of the reasons Jesus didn't use the word hope, because he was the hope. He didn't need to talk about the hope that he was looking forward to. He was proclaiming himself as the hope. And so in so many ways, hope became flesh and dwelt among us and proclaimed good news of the love and kindness and gentleness and forgiveness of our God. So what Jesus often did through parables and through stories is to tell the way in which hope is fulfilled. And oftentimes, they didn't say to him, "Oh, I hope you'll pay attention to me." Instead, the woman who was bleeding to death, hemorrhaging, she went out looking for this Jesus, and as he walks by, she touches his garment, and the story, as we surely know it, who touched me? Someone in need, Jesus is thinking and saying, touched me. Oh, the hope of the little children to find someone gentle, kind, and compassionate was fulfilled in Jesus as they walked up to him and wrapped themselves around him. And Jesus said, you need to be like those little children. You need to have that kind of deep faith that you can trust me. That's essentially what he's saying to the disciples. Don't chase them away. Learn from these children. Learn from their trust. Learn from their joy. Learn from their expression of acceptance, of that kindness, of that gentleness. I think I've said this a number of times, and I hesitate being redundant, but the church in Columbus, Wisconsin, where I grew up as a young boy and as a teenager, we had ministers who came and they all wear these black robes. You remember those black robes? We moved away from the black robes to gray robes, and then ministers got pretty creative and put on all kinds of colors. But I can remember going up to Theodore Reichdahl, who was the minister of our church, and a couple of other ministers as a kid, and feeling safe and warm and accepted and loved as he would wrap his arms around us, my brother, myself, my sister, and we were all part of him. You see, that's the fulfillment of hope. What we want the church to always be is a place where everyone can come and feel that warmth and that gentleness. We become the fulfillment of that hope. We become the fulfillment of that hope. We become the flesh. We become the words. We become the kindness, the gentleness, the compassion, the willingness to give of ourselves in a variety of ways so that others will know that what we represent is love, is compassion, is kindness, is inclusion, caring, and welcome. Welcome to this house of worship and of faith. And so in some respects, if you know through your faith who God is, as best as you can figure it out, and if you know who Jesus is and you have studied the scriptures and you said, well, that's an amazing person, and well, look what he's done, and then you say, I want to be part of him, then you don't need hope anymore because you know what your faith will provide for you in your life, both here and at the moment of death. You know that. You know that. It is part of the gift that comes as a result of saying, I believe in God and I accept Jesus Christ as the one who can give to me insight, light, freedom, and salvation. So hope, when you use the term, use it selectively, if you will. As we urge you to use the word love selectively so that the word hope doesn't lose its biblical, powerful, insightful meaning as it's shared day in and day out by those who believe in Jesus. Keep in mind that hope in the flesh in the form of Jesus responded to the mentally ill man, to the person who was suffering from lameness, from blindness, was lonely and afraid, and who had questions, and who wanted insight and who wanted wisdom. That fulfillment of hope was in this Jesus. And it can be in each of us. We too become the fulfillment of hope. Every day, I am convinced, we meet someone who is struggling. Someone who is wanting to be identified as having value and worth. A number of years ago, I saw a very short clip called the cipher. Cipher is the mathematic term for zero. And this was a person who desperately wanted to be recognized by somebody as having value and worth, but he had come to the conclusion that nobody cared about him. Nobody had any interest in his being. And for him, he had concluded he was nothing more than zero, a cipher. No one is a cipher. If we reach out with our hope in the flesh and say, hello, how's things going today? Is there something you need that I can offer to you? Anything, anything. A greeting at the bank as you're waiting to make a deposit, a greeting at the grocery store, kindness and gentleness at the stop signs, all kinds of ways to let people know that you know they're there, they have value, they have worth, they are not a zero. You become hope in the flesh. One of the writers of great gospel songs is, my hope is built on nothing less than Christ, nothing less than Jesus. That's my hope. Hope in the flesh, this Jesus, this Christ. Amen.